ago, that cloud, with no warning, cast a terrifying shadow across the earth. The atomic bomb brought an end to World War II, the first war to be given a number. We understood the implications that World War III might not be very far behind. The possibility jarred us. We had such great expectations in 1945 for the peaceful enjoyment of a prosperous life. Through the Great Depression and then through war, we had deferred those hopes. Now surely their time had come. But the post-war period turned out to be something called the Cold War. The anxiety it created symbolized in that cloud and this sign, the sign of a fallout shelter, the sign of an ominous time. It wasn't so long ago either. Almost all of today's adults were alive then, at least as infants. Me, I graduated from high school, put away my band uniform, went off to college, married, finished graduate school, and wound up working in Washington with an up-and-coming senator from Texas, a man named Johnson. What about you? Do you remember where you were then, those many years ago?
My name is Ronald Reagan.
Obviously, some of us had different jobs back then as the war came to a close. Lyndon Johnson was in the House of Representatives preparing to run for the Senate, a race he'd win by 87 votes, to be known thereafter as Landslide Lyndon. John F. Kennedy was a freshman congressman in 1946. And so was the man on the right, Richard Nixon. Some political figures hadn't surfaced yet. Jane Fonda was a very young actress. Brother Peter, even younger. Sandra Day O'Connor was in Stanford Law School. Muhammad Ali had a different name, Cassius Clay, but the same talent. Many people were doing then what they would be doing later on. Billy Martin, as a Yankee, helped win the World Series. Major John Glenn, in 1957, setting a new speed record. It's surprising looking back how so many of us admired the same heroes and shared the same assumptions, took similar things for granted, and held a common vision of the course a life should run. Life centered around the traditional family. Bachelors were thought of as eccentric, career girls an exception, homosexuals people with an ugly secret. You went to college if you could, and more could than ever. Got yourself a good job, preferably with a big company. And just assumed getting married, settling down. Premarital sex was a no-no. For nice including children.
This is the voice of baby girl Spiderling.
You wanted at least one child. The Census Bureau said 2.4 was the normal number. You wanted a car. And of course, a home of your own. A place to share with your helpmate. Divorce was practically unheard of. You could always get twin beds instead. Tranquilizers came later. You didn't jog or expect French wine for dinner. But you could smoke all you wanted, and not even the Surgeon General would complain.
As you light up a sweet cigarette, and the vapor forms into a ring, inhaling and blowing, smiling and knowing, a smoke is a wonderful thing.
Here's how a senior in Princeton saw his future. Life will not be a burden for me at 35 because I will be securely anchored in my family. Remember, I hope for 5 children. Yes, I can describe my wife. She will be the Grace Kelly camel's hair coat type, feet on the ground and not an empty shell or a fake. She will also be centered in the home, a housewife. Perhaps at 45, with the children grown up, she will go in for hospital work and so on. The sociologist David Reisman looked closely and saw a generation that was other-directed. Technology, mass production, and advertising encouraged homogeneous desires and thrived on satisfying them. And the American instinct for equality had been spurred by the collective adventure of war and our shared hopes of what victory would bring.
President Harry Truman in Berlin told of the good things to come.
We want peace and prosperity for the world as a whole. If we can put this tremendous machine of ours, which has made this victory possible, to work for peace, we can look forward to the greatest age in the history of mankind.
The country exploded with exhilaration unequaled since. A clean-cut victory in a righteous cause, there's no feeling like it. So the swords would be beaten into plowshares, and bombers would become brand new cars. While supermarkets and shopping centers sprouted a harvest of abundance. Had it not all been prophesied in magazines and newsreels? Moving sidewalks and conveyors for commuters. Little cars that folded up. Lawnmowers that ran themselves. Kitchens crammed with the most fantastic appliances. Gadgets so novel we couldn't even give them a name. Most of these never made it into production. But many more wonderful things became commonplace. Television. In 1947, there were only 7,000 TV sets sold. By 1952, we were buying 6 million a year. Highways and superhighways. Antibiotics, wonder drugs, and much, much more. Tore up our ration cards and brought our faith in progress back from the attic and rubbed it nice and shiny. We were impatient for things still hard to get, like chocolate, tires, bubble gum, and nylon stockings. Above all, for housing. It would be a while before construction could catch up with post-war reconversion. But not the reconversion of human resources. That went ahead full blast. The Saturday Evening Post showed us G.I. Joe, home from the war, turning into Joe College, as painted by Norman Rockwell. Veterans could get $500 a year in tuition benefits, plus a monthly allowance of $50 to $75. So what if conditions were still like the Army? Our campuses had never seen so many students like this. They were older for the most part, and many were married with babies. Thanks to the GI Bill, men who had once hit the beaches were now hitting the books, the first wave of a great post-war rush to higher education. Over 2 million veterans swarmed to college, an army of men now in civies. Before the war, almost half of all college students were women, more than half during the war. Now, co-eds made up less than 1/3 of each class. Women who had held all sorts of jobs during the war were expected to return to more conventional roles, as housewives, or secretaries, or adornments on a glamorous pedestal. The mainstream, that was the place to be.